Welcome, one and all, and greetings from us, the Dads of Lanarchy, as we proudly present the Chapter 1 summary of The Klub. Our story began, as many do, with tragedy. The death of Harlux, father to a half-elf, Benor Grifton, the sorrow-stricken paladin of King Dwendal's army, who was joined by his childhood friend, Shamash Lynx the Cassandalo, a dragonborn that chose a different path in life, becoming a roguish thief. Also filled with sorrow was the reclusive Adeus the Grey. Only his was the sorrow of loneliness, for this wood elf lived alone in a small stump cottage in the forests of the Savalier Wood, choosing a solitary life after the atrocities that unfolded in a different world some time ago. Both the two friends and the lonely wizard faced unwarranted attacks one night. The friends facing clumsy, brutish bandits outside a tavern in Saltney, and the wizard facing a red-cloaked vermin mage who failed to make an exit as clean as his arrival. Shortly after each battle, the soon-to-be adventurers were approached by two strange men. Yuri, a finely dressed magical gnome with dark round spectacles, and his apparent lover, a breathtaking Aarakocra. Tony, cursed with the torso of a bronzed bodybuilder, but brandishing one of the most beautiful pairs of wings ever to be seen. The mysterious duo explaining to the three that they had very important information for each of them, locations of rivals, lost loved ones, and knowledge that could change their lives in exchange for their aid in finding a cure to a terrible illness. The three were instructed to meet at a small trading post on the outer reaches of the Savalier Wood, where it was met with the vast tundra to the north, a place called Lanarchy's Last Stop. It was there the two friends met the introverted wizard, and before setting out on their adventures, Yuri and Tony had proposed they stop in the store and gather some unique supplies. They then loaded up on their new ski wagon and met their two faithful steeds, Clyde and Dale. Venturing into the crystal sands was no easy task, as the path to Palebank quickly proved to be a dangerous one. Briefly stopping for a night's rest in the oddly warm island of trees, there was their first test as a team of three. Combat with a vicious Nothic, set on making a meal of their two horses. Proving to be a good team, they vanquished the creature and also found some strange mushrooms that allowed the party to stay warm through the power of soup. After taking the northern route at a fork in the trail, the party butt heads with some so-called goblin bandits mounted on large, snarling direwolves. Continuing down the snowy trails, the ski wagon entered a deep valley filled with a gang of snowfolk who, despite their appearance, were far from jolly, happy souls. Before the battle of the snowfolk ended, another traveller joined the fray. Siding with the three friends, she aided them in fixing their wagon's course and asked if they had seen any giant owls recently, which they had shortly before entering the valley. She, who was named Berea, told the party about the loss of her third canine companion, and the two large foxes that pulled her sled had been attacked by an owl who had carried off her wolf northward. Joining Berea, the three traveled towards the mountains and came upon the home of the owls they were tracking, as well as a man named Derry. Promptly apologizing for his owl's behavior, he showed Berea that her wolf was perfectly fine and offered to explain the whole thing. After the party parked the sleds in a small sunken cave, where they were tasked with exterminating some slithering and squeaking squatters. After securing a spot for their wagon and investigating an old sled, the party came across a wrapped-up blade covered in the silvered skeleton of a viper. Derry explained that the blade was brought on the pack of a massive black wolf that his owls had caught. Shamash was intrigued and gladly offered himself to the sentient scabbard. Derry also revealed that his largest owl had inexplicably mated with Berea's great white wolf, and before leaving, the party was asked to take care of one of the eggs and keep it safe in a magical case. Now, with Derry's knowledge, the party knew the quickest way to Palebank, the ill-stricken village. They traversed the narrow cliffside trails and eventually encountered a roadblock that rapidly turned itself into a golem. It was controlled by a mage dressed in royal blue and carrying a golden M on his chest. Though it was quick work for our adventurers. Finally exiting the tundra, the party pulled up to the front doors of the Maritime Motel and met their contact, Slick Richard, along with his employees, Cookie and Jeeves. After settling into their room and having a discussion with the ex-adventurer Slick, they attended the funeral of one Ergon Renth, a dwarven explorer that had fallen gravely ill after returning from the island of Iselcross a few weeks prior to the arrival of the party. Elro, the town leader, told the party of another person in town who had showed signs of the same sickness. The party was forced to fight for information about the sickness plaguing the village, starting at the home of Tolga. Things got heated, and yet Tolga still felt cold. They next went to the market in which Ergon had sold some of his treasures from Iselcross. Apparently, a few other people were also looking for clues. With the information gathered, though, the party was led to Croker's Cave, a place filled with giant blue frogs. The party, of course, had no quarrel with the amphibians, though they did tussle with yet another sick individual, Tolga's sister and her goons. The party had all the clues they needed, but couldn't help noticing the village had a few more unsolved issues, including a mysterious water cave in the fort of some local children. Almost ready to set out into the cold northern sea, the party met some violent adventurers in the barn just outside of their motel. Adventurers apparently sent by someone trying to slow down our friends. Before the sails were set, our lads made one final shopping trip, including a stop at everyone's favorite store, Trinket City. After promising Elro they would do their very best to rid the village Palebank of its frigid sickness and save the poor families destined to be the next cold victims, they hopped on board the Remoras, a Newthedonian shipping vessel headed to the shores of the mysterious island Iselcross. Along the journey to the northern continent, the party encountered a few distractions. Icy waves in the waters, harpy sirens looking to claim the souls of any sailor at sea. But worst of all, they met a group of individuals that call themselves the Moracles, who were being guided by a truly evil man by the name of Atreyu, the previous owner of the sword Shamash carried. The Moracles decimated the ship Remoras and killed most of the crew that lay paralyzed on the deck. Atreyu wanted to make sure the party would not follow, so he and the Moracles sunk the Remoras with our friends in tow. Atreyu teleported away as the ship capsized, sending our lads into the cold, dark ocean below. Luckily for our adventurers, Benor had picked up a very special trinket when they first met at Lanuki's last stop, when the party looked like it had met its cold demise. An entity from the deep, massive in size and terrifying to most sailors, The giant lamprey swallowed the party, but not to digest them. Instead, it brought them softly to Kame. This large island-sized sea turtle was covered in sand and jungle. When the party awoke, they were being cared for by a small man named Junko Summer, the fabled savior of the northern realms, thought to be nothing but a ghost story told by sailors who spent too much time on the ocean. It was there the adventurers learned some important things about their past and the man who tried to kill them. Junko wanted the party to dig deep into themselves and sent them to a magical tree in the center of Kame's jungle, and with some imaginative means they made it to the tree in no time, and there they each stepped into a personal trial, geared to help them realize things that they may have buried deep in their subconscious. Shamash made his way through a series of rooms, testing his wit as well as his prowess, and came face to face with his worst enemy, himself. Benoit found himself staring at a strange reflection, but one of who he would have been if he had followed the path his father wanted for him, as reflected by that very father attacking him without remorse. Adeus found himself in a familiar place, one he never thought he would see again, his old home in the forests of Faerun, surrounded by the charred villagers of his past. Each learned many things in this short time they spent on Kame. Choices were made, and growth was the result. Junko believed these three adventurers were meant for great things in this world, and offered items to aid in their journey forward. A plate of ironwood armor for Benoit and his willingness to stand in harm's way to protect his companions. Boot guards for Adeus to keep him on his feet while standing watch and providing cover fire when things got tough. And for Shamash, an inquisitive sword and scabbard to give him insight into the villainous beings that chose to stand in their way. After receiving the blessings from the lonesome demigod Junko, the party was within eyeshot of the danger-ridden continent and a small outpost called Cerinlia, where they were to meet a contact that could point them to the location Ergon found the deadly frigid woe. On their speedy entrance to the shallows of Isocross, they passed the demolished vessel of the Moracles that sunk the Remorhas the party was traveling aboard. When the party reached dry land, they were shown to the hut of the buyer, a mysterious being and apparent CEO of Trinket City franchise. They offered the party top dollar for anything they managed to bring back from the ruins they were heading for. They also offered the aid of a trail guide to help them reach the laboratory of Salzwald. Among the suggested guides the buyer offered was a tabaxi named Perry Thorne, an accomplished ranger and owner of a few large elk that would make the trek much quicker. The party did not hesitate in bringing the ranger along, especially considering he only requested enough coin to finally be able to open a tavern he had been saving for on the mainland. The journey to the laboratory was seeming to be quite uneventful until from below the ice and snow emerged a large creature known as Remorhas, which put up a good fight, unlike the ice methods that laid in wait closer to the ruins of the lab Salzwald. Upon reaching the front doors to the ruins of the fallen Aeorian lab, the party slowly fought their way through animated weapons, suits of armor, carpets, kitchen utensils, as well as undead employees of the lab, poisonous snakes, trapdoors, giant crabs, octopi, and seemingly impervious locks, clearing all but one room from the large complex. After a brief conversation with an ancient scientist, the party found what they were seeking for: the cure. Having gathered what they had come to, they ventured back into the frosty wilds of Isocross. Along the way, they spotted a familiar spellcaster by the name of Captain Darius, and a few of his cronies who were dragging the one remaining crew member of the Remores. They made short work of the moracles, and it seemed the dwarf was set to be free. However, after dispatching the former captain of the moracle ship that sent them to their icy depths, the party decided to relax with a nice cup of tea and some light reading, while Stonebridge, the dwarven prisoner, could do nothing but stare in bewilderment. After eventually freeing Stonebridge and returning to the camp, the party sold some of their collected items and were also rewarded with their choice of free passage to either return to Palebank or join the Cormorant on a voyage to the south. They decided to have the cure sent to Palebank via Trinket City Express and make their way to Saltney with Captain Morris aboard the Cormorant, which is where we shall return with the story of the Cold Club in Chapter 2.